What happened, our bill then went over to the Senate. So we passed out of committee in the House 10-1, which was a stunning victory, even though the TMA testified against it. It then went to the Senate, and we had a great hearing before the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, chaired by Jane Nelson. And I testified again, and we had other doctors testify. We had another outpouring of support by patients. And that's what's new in this effort, is that we've engaged the patients, and the patients are standing up for their doctors. And that's where we get a lot more political power, when we can engage the patients in this process. And they were there in force in this hearing, and virtually, I think all the patients were in favor of us. And the testimony was overwhelmingly in favor of us. Mary Robinson for the Texas Medical Board, she's now the executive director, she testified. They don't take an official position on the bill, but it was clear that she did not like these reforms that would have limited the power of the Texas Medical Board. And she was there, and she got cross-examined by Dan Patrick, the radio show senator, who did a great job. And it was a very productive hearing. At one point during my testimony, one of the senators looked at me incredulous, and he said, "Let me hear that right. Someone can file an anonymous complaint against a doctor without even putting his name on it?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said he was shocked that these complaints were kept confidential, and he expressed the opinion there should be no confidentiality in this process. Somebody files a complaint, that should not be confidential. It should be turned over to the doctor so the doctor can know who his accuser is. And I agreed with him completely. Most of the people on the committee agreed with us. But again, I think the TMA was working behind the scenes. And I think they were working on behalf of the insurance industry, to try to block these reforms. Well, what happened was all the legislation in Texas, virtually all of it if you followed the newspapers, got held up by what they called chubbing here, which was nonstop talk. It's kind of like a filibuster. And because the Democrats in the House did not want to reach the voter ID bill, they talked nonstop about trivial matters to run out the clock. And in Texas, the legislature can only meet in its regular session until June the 1st. And by talking incessantly about the most mundane matters imaginable, like what kind of name you put on a building, and debating the naming of a building on and on and on, the House ran out of time, and virtually no bills of significance passed. In fact, it was so bad that agencies that are due to sunset under Texas law, which means they're due to expire, like the Transportation Agency, it was not renewed. And they never got to the legislation to renew the Texas Transportation Agency, so it's due to expire and cease next year. And Governor Perry had some pretty interesting quotes about that basically he didn't really seem to care. He said, newspaper reported the transportation and insurance departments are subject to closing on September 1st, 2010. That's before the legislature is scheduled to meet again. When legislators did not renew the agencies this past Monday, they raised the specter of a special legislative session to give the agencies new life. And I think we will have a special session when we can reattach our reform provisions. But Perry says, quote, the idea that somehow or another these agencies are going to just go away, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's the law. What's he talking about? I mean, it's the law. The law says they're supposed to sunset. There's no authorization for them to operate after September 1st, 2010. But he says that's not going to happen. He says, quote, the legislature didn't get their work done, but we're going to make sure the Texans are taken care of, and those employees in those agencies are continuing to go to work every day. That's what's important. Okay, that's what's most important, right? that the employees of those agencies can continue to go to work every day. It's pretty crazy. You'd think he would be more concerned about what the law is. All right. The future strategy. We probably will have a special session in Texas, which the governor can call, and I think he has to call, really, to address these other issues. And the insurance department, for example, that's going to disappear if there's no legislation enabling that to continue operation. We've got a way to attach our reform provisions to the insurance bill, the reauthorization of the insurance department, so we can still get our provisions in once a special session is called and they have to address that bill. And by the way, the reason this filibuster occurred, I don't know if I explained that, is because the Democrats in the House did not want the voter ID bill to come up. They did not want there to be a vote on a Republican proposal that you should have to show your driver's license in order to vote to make sure that you're really a legitimate voter. And the Democrats pulled out all the stops to prevent a vote on that bill. It's known as voter ID. And that's why they went into this filibuster mode that delayed everything and prevented almost anything of significance to be called up. But in a special session, we would get around that problem. Special session would be called to reauthorize the insurance department, and then we could attach our provisions to that bill. And the insurance industry is really what we're concerned about anyway. And we're trying to stop these abuses of the complaint process by the insurance industry. So that'll work fine. We also got a commitment from the lieutenant governor that he would appoint an interim committee to look into medical board reform and to make a recommendation for particular provisions, which we've gotten support from most of the legislators anyway. We've got good bipartisan support from Democrats and Republicans for these reforms of the medical board because they've heard from a lot of people in this room, a lot of constituents in Texas, about how the medical board has gotten out of control. And we also put the medical board on the defensive. They had to testify at these hearings. They had to try to explain themselves. And they know now that they're playing defense and that we're pushing bills through the legislature. And if they continue to abuse the medical profession as they have been, that's just going to make for a stronger bill when we do get it passed. So these are all very positive developments. I feel we need to expose the TMA. I feel that has become a problem, like the AMA. And we cannot continue to allow them to say they represent all physicians and then stand in the way of these much-needed reforms. So we need to have a strategy. Maybe we need some resolutions. Maybe we need to expose this, some more investigation as to why these organized medical societies are working against reforms for the medical profession. Unfortunately, I feel that what's happened is the insurance industry, maybe the pharmaceutical industry, they have so much money that they're basically able to capture these medical societies by offering the possibility of lobbying contracts or consulting contracts or whatever, throwing around their money, maybe advertising in journals, maybe sponsoring conferences, and really very cheaply, industry can throw a few $1 million at a medical society and basically, for all intents and purposes, own that medical society. And when you've got these industries that have billions of dollars at stake, a few $1 million in a medical society is nothing. That's the best money they're ever going to spend. And if the insurance industry can interfere with reform of the medical boards by controlling these organized medical societies, that's what they're going to do. And I think that is what they're doing. So we need to, of course, this meeting, maybe some of you have some suggestions. We need a strategy for dealing with that.